and I feel sorry for them.
I call David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, that was an extraordinary speech by Phil Heatley. I mean, to think that this government has been responsible for bringing interest rates down as part of their policy, I seem to think that it's probably got something a little more to do with the world economic situation at the moment, Mr Heatley, and the fact that the interest rates in the United States are around 0.5 to 1%, which is one of the reasons why our interest rates are so low, not because of the policies of your government. However, it does do one thing. It does underscore, for me, the degree of understanding that this government has about the economy and the way that the New Zealand economy is functioning at the moment. I want to remind people what was being said about this budget in January or February of this year. This was touted as the innovation and savings budget, and Bill English has a number of speeches and comments and press releases that you can get off the web talking about exactly that. I went to a number of different speeches by Wayne Mapp. He talked up Denmark. Denmark was the great hope for New Zealand, the way that they invested in R&D and the way that it was progressing. Prime Minister John Key talked about Taiwan and the type of technology that was being done in Taiwan. The only thing is that this has nothing to do and no resemblance to the New Zealand economy. No resemblance, no strategy, no plan what would allow us to think that the New Zealand economy is actually moving towards that same sort of thing that was present in, say, some places like Denmark, Taiwan, Israel, for example, where Wayne Mapp is at the moment with the Prime Minister's Science Advisor, Peter Gluckman. They talked about boldness and step change. What have we seen in this budget to talk about boldness and step change? Well, I tell you what we've got in the R&D sector, and this is the front page headline: reprioritising $36 million over 4 years. Now that's bold. That's going to get us to where Denmark and Taiwan and Singapore and Israel are at the moment, isn't it? $36 million reprioritised. An overall drop in funding to R&D of $12 million. So overall, we're going backwards. And that's exactly, Mr. Speaker, where this government is going right now. We need a plan and a strategy and a growth strategy for this economy to move our economy forward. We are not moving forward. We're going backwards. We have not seen any bold thinking. We've got a $16 billion deficit. That was $5 billion just in surplus just 3 years ago, and we're going backwards. Now, if you want to know what bold looks like, take a look at some of the other countries around the world that we should be emulating, and actually where Dr. Mapp looks to for inspiration, but not much more than that. Let's look at Finland. In 1991, Finland had an inflation rate of 10%, an unemployment rate of 20%, its share market had halved. And what did they do? They took some tough decisions, but most importantly, they increased their R&D spend, their research and development spend by 70%, and they put it into the high-tech growth industries. That's what they did. Where is Finland today? Finland today is where we want to be, where we aspire to be, but without a plan, we're not going to get there. What they also recognised is what they needed to have was a consensus around what was broken in the economy. What they understood was that they needed to find the answers to their economic malaise and their economic growth in the future within Finland, and they had understood that what their real potential, their real resource was their brains. That was their thinking, was their smart, innovative thinking. That's what they did. They increased their R&D spend by 70%, and they charged ahead. We've gone backwards. We've gone backwards by $12 million in this budget. We've gone backwards in the sense that we are, in terms of the R&D spend that we spend as a proportion of GDP, we spent 1.2%. Finland spends 3.5%. The model that Dr. Wayne Matt talks about, Denmark spends more than 3.3%. This is where Finland, Denmark and these other smart countries are going. This is where we should be going. So what is this government planning on doing? This government last year increased our R&D spend by $55 million a year. On the face of it, that looks good. But it spent it in form of grants and vouchers. So when you're an innovative company and you really want to expand and do more in the R&D sector, what you do is you come along to the government and you apply for more money to a government bureaucrat so that you might be able to get a grant or a voucher. And you know what happens? Well, for 60% of those companies that do that, they get turned down. They get turned down. They're not successful in getting those R&D grants and vouchers. They fail. So they go back and they just struggle along by themselves. What does it do to increase the amount of R&D that the businesses are doing across New Zealand? We've got a woeful spend within our businesses on research and development. What does it do? Well, it actually does zero. Because these companies are coming to government for money. They're not reorganising themselves within themselves and looking for more R&D money. They're actually asking for a handout from the government. So we are actually, as a result of that, in comparison to these other places, actually going backwards, not actually going forwards. Right. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, in the budget, straight after the budget, 2 weeks ago, the Labor Party announced its R&D tax policy for the coming election. 12.5% in terms of tax credits. And why did we do that? I tell you why we did that, because that increases the R&D spend amongst companies who most need it. So instead of going for a handout, they simply write it off the bottom line. It incentivises them to actually look at R&D within their company in a more strategic way. And we know that research and development increases innovation, and we know that innovation is the very thing that increases our economic wealth. Treasury itself says that every dollar spent through a tax credit will generate $1 in research and development extra spend by these companies. So we are likely to see New Zealand starting to climb to the very place where we want to be and where actually Dr. Matt would like us to be, and when John Key says he would like to be as well. And that's why it's Labor's policy to increase our research and development. That's why two-thirds of OECD countries have tax credit policies. That's why Australia right now has almost the exact carbon copy of our R&D tax credit policy sitting in front of their Senate about to be passed into law. They came over here, took it over there, and are about to put it into practice. We want an innovative, clean, green society where smart, innovative thinking is the way to go, where it increases our economy and our ability to grow rich. It's not a choice. It's not a choice between agriculture and high tech. It's not an and, it's not an or, it's an and. We need both the agriculture, but we need to develop this type of growth within New Zealand. This is $280,000 per job. $280,000 a job. Tax credits are a start on the path to that point. We are going to look for a clean, green, clever, innovative society where, as Paul Callaghan says, the place where talent wants to come and live. That's what we aspire to, Mr. Speaker. That's what this Labor government will...
Look, give the Speaker a fair go. There's too much noise, too much interjections. If you want to have conversations, go to the lobbies. David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's the sort of economy that I want to see. That's the sort of society that I want to see here in New Zealand. A clean, green, clever, smart, innovative country where people want to come and live. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just say in closing, I just wanted to say a special farewell to John Carter. We always have our differences, Mr. Carter, but we've enjoyed having you, and I've learned a lot from you. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Nathan